Now tuned into the greatest.
The Run with Manny Wilson podcast.
The Run with Manny Wilson podcast.
The best sports podcast there is.
Yes, sir. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to The Run with me, Manny Wilson, all the way from Detroit to Chicago to your speakers and headphones. I appreciate you tuning in to the first interactive sports podcast, a community that makes sure your voice is heard. So if you're something you agree with, you disagree with, you like or you dislike, go ahead, shoot me a quick take, 219-413-9405. And of course, we'll play your take back on our next episode. And shout out to SeatGeek for sponsoring this episode. Get $20 off your first ticket purchase when you use the promo code The Run Podcast. Now, this code can only be applied for first-time users on the mobile app or website. So I don't know about you, but going to the Bears games this Sunday, and of course, had to go ahead, create my account and buy my ticket using SeatGeek to save myself $20. So I don't know about you, but go ahead, check that out. And speaking of the NFL, though, Week 9 in the NFL is coming up. Obviously, Thursday night here, so you're probably going to hear this during the Ravens and Bengals game, but got some stuff I'll go on, since that game's going on. I'm not really going to give a rough prediction, but some other things I do want to mention. And escaping the AFC, we're going to slide over to the NFC and just kind of bring up the most dangerous teams in the NFC right now. So we know right off rip, there's been a lot of talk. Oh, the Detroit Lions. Oh, they're 7-1. They're doing their thing. They're killing everybody. They're beating teams by 30. They're putting up 50 points. And, it's been a lot of talk and a lot of blah, blah, blah about the Lions. People are finally realizing that the Lions are the best team in the NFL of the NFC right now, and arguably in the NFL, which is completely valid. I respect it, and I got to give credit where it's due. So Lions definitely a top tier, dangerous contender in the NFC, without a doubt. I mean, this is literally their Super Bowl to go grab and play the Chiefs and beat the Chiefs. People are now depending on the Lions to stop the Kansas City Chiefs from three-peating. I mean, it's what's going on. You look at the trends on social media. People are like, please save us, Detroit Lions. And I think that's valid because, they're on another level right now, and nobody in the NFL has another offensive line that can gain yards like they do. This team is getting a push every single time they snap the ball on the offensive end. And then when you're rushing the ball, you got the animals like Gibbs and Montgomery behind that powerful offensive line who's getting a solid push every time. It's just beautiful to watch. And above all, man, it's great football that the Detroit Lions are playing right now. And one of the aspects that's kind of underrated is the defense. Obviously, we know the defense for the Lions has a lot of different injuries going on with that defensive line, but just landed Zadarius Smith, the 3-time All-Pro for the defensive line. And man, I just know he's about to cause some ruckus over there with that defensive line. The front is already crazy, even with a team full of second stringers and all of that stuff. So you got to give credit where it's due, man. This team has been going hard. You got to consider the Detroit Lions as like serious elite contenders in the NFL right now, of the NFC specifically. But one of the most impressive things I think I've seen with the Lions is the fact that although the defense has some injuries, and we know that defensive line is, picked up a new All-Pro and all of that, it's really the defensive back group. They got 2 safeties that are top 5 in interceptions. Joseph and Branch are both top 5 in interceptions. It's ridiculous to think about. Kirby Joseph is number 2, and then Branch is at number 5. So they've been locking up in terms of protecting the air and protecting that secondary. So you got to give credit to them, man. I think ultimately, if teams are going to beat the Detroit Lions, it's going to come down to if you can outscore the Lions. We're not even talking about the defense, but just the offense of being that solid and getting yards and just having that much control over the game. I don't think teams are going to be able to beat the Lions because they won't be able to outscore the Lions and score as efficiently as the Lions can so far. They make it look effortless when they're out there. So, hey, man, that's a team you want to keep an eye open for them. They're definitely looking extremely dangerous right now. And yeah, I think as anyone with eyes who can see what they've been doing on the field, it's clear they're the favorites right now in the NFC. Easily. Another team, though, that I think has a pretty good shot at getting there is the Atlanta Falcons. I think the Atlanta Falcons is also a team that could be a runner-up in the NFC. I mean, this is a dangerous offense with a subpar defense. They've been improving week after week after week in all aspects of this team, especially in that offense. Kirk Cousins has finally been able to find a groove within the offense, and they've been getting things good. Zach Robinson been calling some good plays. The play calling is looking free-flowing and all of that. So I'm loving it. And then you got to mention, too, the Atlanta Falcons offense, they're fourth in air yards in the NFL so far this season. So they're really letting that thing fly, but you can't even discredit what they're doing on the ground with Bijan Robinson now that they finally got the healthy O-line back. So you have to consider those type of things. I said the subpar defense is the part where it kind of concerns me. It is a little scary to think about because, you know, teams are still scoring efficiently against the Atlanta Falcons, whether they're good or bad or, shaky middle ground. It's like they're giving up points time after time. And I don't think they'll really be able to start smacking teams and beating teams as good as they can until the defense can hold other teams from scoring points. So that's one thing that concerns me. However, I'm confident because with an experienced quarterback like Kirk Cousins, he can help you win games in the clutch. He has playoff experience. Yes, his record isn't extremely pretty when you talk about his playoff experience, but the fact that he's been there is better than him not being there at all. And it does make a huge difference. A lot of people say he couldn't win in primetime, but look, there has been a first for that. We've seen him win multiple games in primetime this year. So him going to the playoffs, I think there could be that type of success where it's like, oh, he doesn't win in the playoffs. He's not a good playoff quarterback. And then all of a sudden he's winning games in the playoffs. So I think this is something that we could possibly see from the Atlanta Falcons. They've been playing solid, so I got to give credit to them, and that's a non-biased take. Obviously, y'all know I hope the Lions win or the Falcons win a Super Bowl, but we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. There's a couple other teams too. I want to give credit. The Philadelphia Eagles. They've been playing fairly solid as of lately. They've been winning some games. Right now, they're 6-2, and the thing with the Eagles that I've mainly been concerned about is Jalen Hurts. So before I touch on Jalen Hurts, I just want to say the two losses that the Eagles have as a whole is to the Falcons and the Buccaneers, two elite offenses, and it just so happened the game wasn't going their way. But within Jalen Hurts, in times where I've seen him play good, you got to give him credit where it's due. I'm on the record. In the beginning of the season, I said Jalen Hurts is not a top 5 quarterback, and I still stand on that. I don't think Jalen Hurts is a top 5 quarterback in the NFL today, especially not in this NFL season that we're currently watching. However, you have to give credit where it's due because Jalen Hurts has been limiting turnovers like crazy. He hasn't thrown an interception since week 3 in the NFL. There's been 5 weeks consecutively where he has not thrown an interception. So you got to give credit that he's protecting the ball like he hasn't done in the past. He has 8 rushing touchdowns and 10 passing touchdowns. But the main thing out of all of this on the offensive side, yeah, they got the weapons, Devontae Smith, they got Saquon Barkley, which is amazing. It's just the one question that really drives me crazy about the Eagles is, can this offensive line really nail in and protect Jalen Hurts when it's necessary? Because he's been sacked a lot of different times so far in this season. 21 times to be specific. I believe that's top 10 in quarterbacks who have been sacked, but not many 6-2 quarterbacks in the NFL have been sacked this many times. Jalen Hurts, we know he's a guy with some legs. He can run, he can evade the sack, but it's only so much of that he can do if the offensive line is not giving him proper time to do that. So Eagles, they have been fairly solid. We've seen some shaky moments. Jalen Hurts, we've seen some shaky moments last week. He made some beautiful throws. Saquon Barkley had some beautiful plays with the reverse hurdle, which is just wild. I still can't even believe he did that. The reverse hurdle was nuts. But above all, we've seen the Eagles. They've been fairly solid for the most part. So you got to give them some credit about what they've been doing in their play. I think you have to consider the Philadelphia Eagles as a legitimate contender in the NFC. Not saying they'll cause some damage, but they have the experience. They've been there before. And then this is a 6-2 team who's been seemingly getting better and better as the year has been going on in the season. And the quarterback hasn't been turning the ball over, and that's the most you can ask for Jalen Hurts. So you got to consider the Philadelphia Eagles. when you talk about true contenders in the NFC. I don't want to count them out just yet. Another team, too, that people are going to be upset about. I got to mention them. And this is the last team, too. I got to mention them. The Washington Commanders. They're 7-2 right now, which looks great on paper. You got Jaden Daniels. He's been playing great. He's been doing this thing, throwing over 200 yards in every single game since week 1. I mean, the Commanders are leading the NFL in rushing touchdowns right now. They've been playing great. All around, week by week, it's entertaining to watch. It's fun. It's new. It's something exciting. But truth be told, let's be honest for a second. The Washington Commanders are not going to be a true force in the NFC when it comes to the playoff time. I seriously doubt, and I find it unbelievable that Jaden Daniels will end up taking this Washington Commanders team far on a deep playoff run. Will he get past the wild card if they have to play somebody? Of course. Will he possibly win a division round? Maybe, but I think that's where the trip will end for Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders at best, because the experience is just not there. And when we look at the teams, it really just depends on the matchup and who they play. The NFC is not stacked with a bunch of crazy talented teams, but they're stacked with experienced quarterback and experienced guys. So they run into a team like the Rams, it's going to be a little bit dangerous. You know Matthew Stafford gets down. Matthew Stafford can win ball games, so it might be a little rough. They run against the Seattle Seahawks. It might be a little rough. They run into the Falcons. They run into the Eagles. It could get ugly. And yes, we've seen this team roll over the past few weeks, but above all, playoffs is a different ball game, and I'm just not that confident in the Washington Commanders just yet that they'll still be able to go against teams in the playoffs, a Green Bay Packers or a Minnesota Vikings, and actually be able to beat them. Although these teams are more experienced. Experience usually has the favor in the postseason. When you look at all the other results that's been going on, typically in the Super Bowl, in every matchup down below, the team with more experience usually wins. So because of that reason, I would be very, very shocked if the Commanders did go on a deep playoff run and really make something happen. Either way, them going to the playoffs, them having a 7-2 record as of right now going into week 9, it's already huge. It's a huge win for the season, but obviously you want to push for more. So the Commanders, they're a threat, but I don't think they're going to be a true contender in the playoffs when it comes down to it. Would I want to run into the Commanders? Hell no, I don't want to play the Commanders. But above all, I think, they'll make for a great game, but I don't know if they'll be able to close that game out and actually win it. That's just it. All right, anyway, look, hang in there. We got some news for the run, and then we got a couple of things, too, about the Cowboys and some other teams that they may have to think about calling it quits. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. It's halftime. All right, and news for the run. But before we jump into that, I want to let you guys know, go ahead, shoot us a quick take on the voicemail line. If you hear any news or if you want to comment on our last segment, 219-413-9405. And of course, we'll play your take back on our next episode. But here we go. News for the run. Starting off with the NFL trade deadline, because the trade deadline was on election day, but the Detroit Lions, they added an all-pro to their defensive front. Crazy here that the league even allowed this to happen, especially the Cleveland Browns. It's just wild. But the Lions, they sent the Cleveland Browns a 2025 5th-round pick and a 2026 6th-round pick and received a 3-time All-Pro, Zadarius Smith, along with a 2026 7th-round draft pick. So, in other words, they absolutely fleeced the Cleveland Browns. They got robbed. They're not the only team that was making deals, though. The Chicago Bears, they traded Khalil Herbert to the Cincinnati Bengals for a 2025 6th or 5th round draft pick. Correction. That's a 7th round draft pick. I know I just gave you all the numbers, but the Chicago Bears traded Khalil Herbert to the Cincinnati Bengals for a 2025 7th round draft pick. And also the New York Jets, they made some moves too. They traded Mike Williams to the Pittsburgh Steelers for a 5th round draft pick. The New Orleans Saints, they traded their 4-time All-Pro Marshawn Lattimore to the Washington Commanders. And man, that's a huge pickup for the Commanders, adding a solid cornerback on their secondary there. So other things too, some injuries happened last week that we'll go ahead and recap you on and refresh you on. So the Dallas Cowboys quarterback, Dak Prescott, he was injured in the fourth quarter last week against the Falcons. He suffered a hamstring injury, and as of now, multiple reports are saying that he'll miss at least 4 weeks of this season. So Cowboy CeeDee Lamb was also hit with the injury last week against the Falcons game. It was a shoulder injury, but people did confirm that it was a sprained AC joint, and as of now, the reports are saying it's nothing that is considered serious. It sounds brutal, but they said it's nothing that's considered serious, and he's expected to play next week against the Philadelphia Eagles. And I'll give you guys some college football, some of the rankings too. I'll just give you straight rankings because I know I wasn't able to record on the episode on Monday. It was just crazy times, as you know. A lot going on. But anyway, to explain, actually, before I jump into the rankings, because y'all need to hear this. I stood in line to vote. You know, I'm always saying, you know, everybody should vote, whatever. Regardless of who you vote for, do your thing. Stood in line. 5 hours. Kid you not. 5 hours was in line. So that is, if you're wondering, damn, we didn't get an episode earlier in the week. That's exactly why you did not get an episode. 5 hours, bro. 5 hours. It was crazy. Could not believe man, it was wild. Anyway, let's go back to the sports that we were talking about. College football playoff rankings. Top 5 teams. Oregon at number 1, Ohio State at number 2, Georgia at number 3, University of Miami at number 4, University of Texas at number 5 in college football rankings. So Penn State is at number 7, Penn State is at number 6, Tennessee is at number 7, Alabama is at number 11, Boise State has crept up to number 12. You still got a few undefeated teams here. Indiana sitting at number 8, they're 9-0. BYU sitting at number 9, 8-0, and they're still holding on strong. And of course, you know, the top 5 seeds are undefeated between Miami and Oregon. Those two teams are still undefeated. So crazy things going on in college football. I will say you can watch some good matchups. Texas plays Florida, Miami plays Georgia Tech, Michigan plays Indiana, Iowa State plays Kansas, Maryland plays Oregon, another Big Ten matchup. I would say Florida State and Notre Dame, but Florida State is 1-8, so I can't even give y'all that game. But Washington and Penn State should be a good game that I'll probably keep an eye out for. And then Ohio State, they're probably going to smack up Purdue as they play. So I would say keep an eye out for those games, if anything. And then let's move over to the NFL because we got a couple of scores and just some games to cover that I know I'm going to watch coming up in the NFL. So today is Thursday Night Football. You're going to watch the Bengals and the Ravens. I'm excited for this, and I'll actually give you some more information on that come next segment because, you know, that's what we're going to focus on. It'll be cool to listen to, even though if you already watched the game. So want to give that heads up. But my Falcons will take on the New Orleans Saints in New Orleans. They got to get a win here. It's a rivalry game, but we know the Saints, they've been having some struggles. They fired their head coach, and they're going through some things right now. They're struggling. I'll say that much. As far as some other games, gonna watch the Chiefs and Broncos. Want to see what the Kansas City Chiefs do. The 49ers do play the Buccaneers. Should be a good game. The Washington Commanders versus the Pittsburgh Steelers is another game I'll keep an eye out for. Then the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Dallas Cowboys should be good. And Sunday night primetime slot, Detroit Lions versus the Houston Texans should be a phenomenal game. Especially since Nico Collins is rumored to come back and play this Sunday. And then for the Monday night game, you got the Miami Dolphins and the Los Angeles Rams, which should be a good game. But anyway, I'll say this, man. Let's focus on this Baltimore Ravens game and the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, I'm expecting a shootout here. In the previous game where these two guys played earlier between the Ravens and the Bengals, it was a solid game. It was a bunch of yards, a bunch of receiving yards, a bunch of rushing yards, a very high-scoring game. It went to overtime, and I mean, it was phenomenal to watch, even though it was that early on in the season. So the thing that I want to break down on and what I want to kind of, you know, make fun here, because obviously, as I said, the game is about to come on, so y'all probably already know what happened and everything, and I'll try and give a recap. No promises on that, but I want to go ahead and give y'all some of the bets I got. I don't know if they're going to hit yet. The game hasn't started. It actually starts in 15 minutes. But last game, the Baltimore Ravens, they won 41-38. It was a crazy overtime thriller. Lamar Jackson threw for 348 yards, completed 28 out of his 42 passes, 4 touchdowns. Joe Burrow threw for 5 touchdowns, threw for 392 yards. Like, it was a crazy shootout last time they matched up earlier. I think it was like week 4 or something like that. So some of the bets, just based on the statistics and things that I have seen and the different patterns that's been going on. So starting off, I got Joe Burrow over 1.5 passing touchdowns, which means he's got to get 2 touchdowns. He got to get 2 passing touchdowns. Got Lamar Jackson over 225 passing yards. Lamar Jackson over 40 rushing yards. Jamar Chase over 70 receiving yards. And I'm going to tell you exactly why I even went with some of these bets here. So as far as the Jamar Chase thing, I got Jamar Chase over 70 receiving yards because this man has been a monster. He's averaging 79.7 yards per game in 2024. He had a season high 193 yards versus Baltimore in week 5, where the Ravens ended up winning. So that gives me a little confidence there. And the Ravens, they've allowed the 3rd most reception yards per game to wide receivers. So an elite receiver like Jamar Chase, man, I can't help but to believe that he'll get over 70 receiving yards. So he's seen 11 targets in back-to-back games. And, last game, I think in the past 2 weeks, he's had over 75 receiving yards. So I'm like, it's no reason Jamar Chase shouldn't get that one more time. So I'm feeling confident on that. The Joe Burrow over 1.5 passing touchdowns. I think this is a sweet line here because he hit this line 6 out of 9 games. 3 to 4 games on the road. He had 5 passing touchdowns in the last matchup against the Baltimore Ravens, and I kind of think he just is going to repeat that. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game, a fun game to watch, so 2 touchdowns should be a breeze. Also, too, Ravens, that defense, they allowed the 3rd most passing touchdowns in the NFL right now. So, hey, Joe Burrow, Bengals, do your thing. I'm hoping they get that done. I got the Lamar Jackson, 200 passing yards. He's thrown over 280 passing yards in 5 straight games. This man has been an absolute monster, so I got some faith there. And the Bengals, they play a lot of cover 3, so I'm hoping that because they play a lot of cover 3, and seeing that Lamar Jackson ranks number 1 in passing against cover 3 defenses, I'm hoping he easily attains this 200-plus yards. So that should be a breeze there. As far as that bet. And then I do have one more. I had the receiving yards for I had the rushing yards. Yep, the rushing yards for Lamar Jackson also. So with the rushing yards, I'm a little confident here, and I think Lamar Jackson will definitely get the rushing yards because this is a guy, obviously we know what he can do with his legs, but above all, man, this dude, he gets it done in the air. And he's had 12 carries for 55 yards against the Bengals in that last matchup. If he gets anywhere near 12 carries, I think he definitely gets that 40 rushing yards, which should be a breeze. So I'm confident there. Hoping that one hit. And then just to kind of give you the odds on there, I'm using a bonus too. So it's a plus 540 odds. So it should be straight. And just to kind of reiterate everything I was saying, so I got Joe Burrow over 1.5 passing touchdowns, Lamar Jackson over 225 passing yards, Lamar Jackson over 40 rushing yards, Jamar Chase over 40 or over 70 receiving yards. So this should be money. I gave you the information of why it should hit, and then I threw another quick parlay out there too. It's just a quick little ladder, 50, 60, 70. I threw Zay Flowers for 60 or for 50 receiving yards. Derrick Henry, 70 rushing yards. Jamar Chase, 60 receiving yards. That should be easily attainable. Big game I'm hoping for. Maybe you'll hear the recap. Maybe you'll hear it. We'll see. I'm going to try and give y'all the recap, but I'm going to leave y'all with this, man. Last thing here is, as I've been going on to say, there's some teams in the NFL where it's just time to call it quits. You need to realize where you are. Realize that it's not good for you. Realize the season is pretty much over. And one of those teams that need to realize that the season is over for you is the Dallas Cowboys. You guys are 3-5 right now, in the 3rd in the NFC East, which means nothing because you're 3-5. You're pretty much on a 3-game losing streak, possibly 4-game losing streak because you're about to go against the Philadelphia Eagles at home. But I mean, what does that mean when you're playing in Dallas? Nothing really, because they've still been losing consecutively while at home. So it's no big deal here. Eagles have been rolling. They look good so far in the past few weeks. So I'm pretty nervous for the Dallas Cowboys coming into this matchup. And I think it's going to turn out to where the Cowboys fall short again and end up on a 4-game losing streak. But it's time to wrap it up, man. It's time. Dak Prescott is going to be out for the next 4 weeks. You got Cooper Rush in. Cooper Rush is solid, but Cooper Rush is not about to lead the Cowboys on a playoff journey. Not happening at all. CeeDee Lamb is already banged up a little bit. Hopefully he can still get the receiving yards and the receptions that he would love to have. As far as the Cowboys, bro, it's not looking good at all for what these guys can do. And then I'm looking at the matchups these guys have. Whoo, it gets ugly for the Dallas Cowboys. And this is the primary reason why I say it's over for the Dallas Cowboys. Time to start looking at next season. Time to start looking at the offseason and figure out what the hell you need to do differently from the past 5 years. Because coming up in the schedule, again, you got the Eagles. You're probably going to lose that. But you got the Houston Texans. You got the Commanders. You got the Giants, where you could probably sneak in a win. But after that, you got the Bengals, who are in a playoff pursuit right now. And it does not get easier because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are in a playoff pursuit. Then you see the Eagles again and the Commanders once again. So it does not get any easier for the Dallas Cowboys. And I think it's time to hang it up, man. Y'all ain't got much going on. 3-5. I doubt you see the wild card. At best, at absolute best, maybe you win 7 games. Maybe you can beat the Giants again. And you better beat the Panthers and take advantage of that when you play them. So at best, maybe 7 games. That's at best, though. And that's me being generous. Truthfully, y'all might only win 5 or 6 games. But anyway, that's another story for another day. I'm going to leave y'all with this, man. Appreciate you for hanging with me. I got to leave you on a positive note. And the positive note that I'm going to say is just, focus on yourself, man. Focus on yourself. Focus on what you got to do. Focus on what you got to take care of. And, sometimes it's easy to be, so focused on everything else and trying to be a good person and trying to, worry about other things that's going on. But I find that sometimes we're nicer to others more than we're nicer than ourselves. So focus on yourself. Make sure you make yourself feel okay. Make sure you're nice and genuine to yourself, and you treat others with respect. You treat others nice and uphold their standards. Uphold your own standards. Keep yourself disciplined. Like, make sure you're good in your sense. So focus on yourself. Do what you got to do to make sure you locked in and you well taken care of. So nobody's going to take care of you better than what you can take care of yourself. So accept that, receive that however you want to receive that. Other than that, man, hey, look, man, sorry for the one episode this week, but as y'all know, it's been just a crazy week of just busy type of stuff. Obviously, election week, everybody just needs the week off for election. Like, I'm just a firm believer. We all just need the week off for election. Just, voting 5 hours, crazy, just crazy. Other than that, look, man, I'm up out of here. I'm about to watch this Baltimore Ravens and Bengals game. But until then, man, hey, share this with a cousin, a brother, an aunt, an uncle, a niece, a nephew, a coworker, a friend, a spouse, a partner, your side piece, your main piece, your whatever you got to do. Whatever you got to do. Send this to them. Promise you they're not going to mind, especially if I talked about their favorite team. And other than that, man, look, we'll be back later on next week. Later on, early next week. And so on and so on and so on.